Hello, I'm Mike Bain from Christian Voice New Zealand, and thanks for joining me as we look at today's culture through the lens of the Bible. And today, I want to make it quite clear that we're living in a time of peril. More in a moment. In the book of Matthew 24, Jesus mentioned, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage up to the day that Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it'll be at the coming of the Son of Man. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come, but understand this. If the owner of the house had known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have left his house or let his house be broken into. So you also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. Now earlier, Jesus spoke of a time when we should be wary of who we should trust. Jesus answered in verse 4 of Matthew 24, "Watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, claiming I am the Messiah, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumours of wars, but see to it that you're not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom." Now, to be honest, if you've no idea of what is happening relating to this, the conflicts in the world, you must be living in the back blocks or the bush off the grid in a place called Maricopa. So over the past year, we've heard the drums of war beating and getting louder by the day as the nations like China, Iran, North Korea, Russia, labelled as the axis of evil, have escalated their intentions to seize control of other nations' borders. Conflict in the Middle East, one of the world's hotspots, has been on the brink of war since Israel was established, but just watch how the latest conflict develops, and will it escalate into a full-blown regional war? And I don't know if you've noted the action of the USA President Donald Trump. He says, we'll wait and see. Sometimes they just have to fight it out. But closer to home, listen to the rhetoric coming from Wellington about the need for us here in New Zealand to prepare our defence force, as we can no longer expect assistance from our military partners, as other European nations and even Australia have realised that they're underprepared and are increasing military budgets. Sure looks like the world is getting ready for something, and if you were following our podcast last year, you'll be aware that we spoke regularly on the matter about security. It doesn't matter where you look, the nations are rising against one another, and countries who have a reasonably stable record of peace like New Zealand. What are we seeing? We're seeing a nation rising against itself. The USA is heading for an internal civil war and is fighting against itself. I mean, when have you ever heard of an elite fighting force like the Marines being deployed in their own country? There will be famines and earthquakes in various places, Jesus said. All these are the beginning of birth pains. Well, let's talk about famines. We're all aware that places in Africa have serious food shortages, and right now the people of Gaza are facing a huge humanitarian crisis. But what about the rest of the world? Well, during the COVID years, we were annoyed, weren't we? We couldn't purchase products in the supermarket, like flour, for example. But it's happening again, as food shortages in the Western world are beginning to become more noticeable. The Green Agenda, currently carried out as a part of the United Nations Agenda 2030, aided in Europe by the World Economic Forum, has seen farmers being pushed off their lands. Thankfully, we've seen a pushback by our farmers here in New Zealand, but that is exactly what the last left-leaning government was attempting to do in New Zealand. Just quickly on earthquakes, volcanic activity and landslides and other natural disasters like fires, flood, global warming. When is this not in the news? Even here in New Zealand, every time it rains, now there's a weather alert about how catastrophic it's going to be. Scoff all you like, yes, but these things have been around for a long time, but the frequency of all of these things has increased, so much so we actually ignore the stories, even worse, the warnings. Back to Jesus' words in verse 9. Then you'll be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you'll be hated by all nations because of me. At the time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other, and many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold, but the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. Now, for expediency, I've lumped all of these together. Persecution is expected. If you're a Christian, stand up for God, then yes, you get the t-shirt, but wear it well. Look, you may not be persecuted like our brothers and sisters in some countries. Your story will never make the pages of the Voice of the Martyrs magazine. But you're going through it even if you don't see it. If this culture can shut down the church, they're going to do it. You might say, but there's no persecution of churches in this country. There wasn't any persecution of Christian churches as the Nazis came to power in Germany in the last century. Why? Well, because the church back then wasn't as docile as they are today, finding excuses not to be involved in saving this culture, just themselves. But persecution is happening. Try talking about God tomorrow at work or with your friends and just watch you be shut down and ridiculed. Do I need to mention the increase of wickedness? If your door is locked, then you know what we're saying. And in verse 14, Jesus said, "And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come." So there it is, a call for the gospel to be preached, but who's doing it? Who do you know? And can you tell me who is actively speaking the gospel into other people's lives? And if you can you name anyone you spoke to about the gospel yesterday? Okay, I'll give you some leeway. Last week, last month, maybe this year. I've just touched on some of the points Jesus made as a sign of the end times, but surely you can't sit there like some pastors I've met and deny that we're in the last days and the Son of Man is due to return. You know, we as a movement for God, we need to move. We need to stop sitting on our hands. We need to have taken action yesterday, but it's not too late to do something about it. You know, we need to be like the 10 virgins that Jesus spoke about in chapter 25. We need to keep our lights burning for the Lord. But if you remain in the dark and be a spectator like the people of Noah's day, well, that's up to you. And guess what? You'll reap the rewards that only you deserve. And then you cannot be envious of what your brother has received because their reward is greater. A movement is a motion. It's either going forward, sideways, or backwards. So what direction is your movement going? I'm going to leave it there today, but thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave your comments and please subscribe to our weekly newsletter on our website, christianvoicenewzealand.com. But let me leave you with a thought from Psalm 103, verse 13. As the Father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him. Until next time.